This is the talk show that takes a no-holds-barred approach to politics, where truth and integrity are the standard and the Constitution honored. From Renaissance Studios, this is Champion News Talk Radio.
Good morning and welcome to another great edition of Champion News Talk Radio. We're brought to you by championnews.net, and we are your choice for the conservative voice. Thank you for joining us this morning, and don't forget to check out that Illinois pension scam book, because that's the problem here in Illinois. This is Carol Parisi. Today our founder, Jack Roser, and myself have a very special guest, a very special friend from the Chicago IRR PAC, Deb Gordils. Hello, Deb. Good morning,
Carol.
Jack. How are you today?
Well, I'm very pleased because we got Deb Gordils here. And Deb Gordils is a woman, one of the bravest women in the city of Chicago. She came to me and prevailed on me to feed a few nickels in her direction because she was ambitious to actually become a registered Republican in a vast desert. So you think the Sahara's a desert. There's fewer Republicans in Chicago than before she started a trend than there are in the Sahara Desert. But there's a lot of people who don't have the guts to stand up and be called a Republican in the vast city of Chicago. The chicanery is knee-deep or shoulder-deep, whatever. We don't want nobody sent as their motto. And against all of that, Deb Gordils stepped up for values and ran against the entrenched machine. So what's happened there? But she's been very successful in starting 2 offices for the Republican Renaissance PAC in the city of Chicago, one on the north side, one on the south. And wonder of wonders, she's also started a Spanish newspaper that has gotten national acclaim. I participated in naming it, but this thing, initiating it was her advice. I nudged this thing along with Nichols. She provided a lot of daring and talent. And the newspaper is El Sueño Americano.
And Deb, what does that mean?
The American dream.
American dream. Why do you think these people are busting our borders down to get in here? It isn't to steal from us. It's to participate in the American dream. And President, my goodness, this guy that we've got president that's revealed himself as a thoroughgoing socialist is doing his best to ruin the American dream for all of us. Really, what does it mean? It means us people are in charge of ourselves, and we don't need dukes up on the hill. We don't need smart alecks, arrogant people to run the government and make every single decision for us. But anyway, this is a woman of great intellect and bravery, and she's become quite a political figure in the city of Chicago. And she's sparked a revolt. We've gotten people actually elected in Chicago as Republican activists. If I pay, are you willing now to pay me for all of these encomiums?
I love it. Thank you so much, Jack.
Yeah, speak for yourself.
I think what everybody has to keep in mind is that the whole motivation behind El Sueño Americano newspaper and all Spanish conservative newspaper is to help new Americans continue to build a stronger America. And that is really our goal as we pump these new Americans with information about politics, education, policies, elected officials, how the United States government operates, how they can get involved in the electoral process, which is a citizen's right to. We begin to make America stronger and stronger. If you have a populace that continues to grow, yet doesn't assimilate or integrate or understand U.S. American history, we have a problem.
Are you speaking of Republicans in the city of Chicago? They fit this description of foreigners and people
I'm finding
not
that the
benefited
appeal
by the political system.
Yeah, I think the appeal has gone beyond Chicago. I think initially we were thinking, let's go into the Hispanic communities in Chicago, which El Sueño Americano is now 15,000 hard copies.
Even before El Sueño Americano, you were busy establishing 2 really Republican offices for
Yeah, I think when we
Republican
came on
Renaissance
board,
back.
the reality was there was little or no activity, really no activity on the Republican side. And people need to understand in Illinois and across the country, well, how do you do that? You have 50 wards. So Chicago's divided into 50 neighborhoods, 50 wards with 50 ward bosses. And each of those wards has an alderman, the boss, and a Democratic committeeman and a Republican committeeman. The Democrats were very clever in having their own elected as a Republican committeeman. So there were really two Democratic committeemen. The Republican committeeman was posing as a Republican, but really a Democrat.
How could that be possible?
Well, it's easy. If you have a huge voting block of Democrats.
You're a Republican.
Yeah. Well, if you have in every neighborhood an excess of thousands and thousands of Democrat voters, you just ask 1,000 of them to vote Republican, and that's their job. They listen to what the ward boss says. They move over. They vote Republican. It's no big deal to them. They're doing what they're told to do. So they come over and they vote Republican, and they outweigh the Republican vote that does come out for the turnout. And what you end up is what the word that's been banged around often was a rhino. So when Jack said, let's look and review what's happening in Chicago, the report back was out of 50 Republican committeemen in Chicago, we're being conservative when we say that 40 of them are not true Republicans, 40 of them are Democrats. And so people say,
the other 10 were highly tainted.
Well, you know, you could only bang your head against the wall so many times before you're sitting there and you're a dazed Republican, sort of, you know, waving the white flag, or, you know, we found them pretty beat up when we came in, the few that were. We gathered them up and we worked with them, and then we began running committeemen. And if you look at the 2012 Republican committeemen's race, and you compare it to all elections before, you will see that in some cases, in some wards, you had 3 or 4 Republican committeemen candidates running for a position that is a non-paid position. And so that begs the question when people say, well, a committeeman can only do so much. Well, not in Chicago. Actually, a committeeman in Chicago held more power than almost anywhere else. And the reason that they
why
held
is that?
Well, because they were able.
The committeeman in Chicago, that's an elected position, is a second step up the political ladder. In all of the rest of the state, a committeeman is elected of a much smaller unit than a committeeman in Chicago. And he's called a precinct captain, and he's not elected, he's appointed. So that's the difference in Chicago.
A committeeman election occurs during a primary election.
It's a big election.
It's a big election.
Time election. A lot of people.
Election. That's
much larger than a precinct outside of.
Absolutely, it's a whole different set of rules and ball game, and the legislature looks at that way. And the authority that the Cook County Republican committeemen were given.
County?
I said, yeah. The authority that they were given as committeemen in Chicago was that whenever there was not a Republican candidate who ran in the primary as a Republican for the state house, as a House representative or a state senator, then the committeemen can gather together in their respective districts, and sometimes there would be anywhere from 3 to 7 of them, 8 of them, and they can appoint a candidate to run in the general. So the Democrats, for almost 2 decades, 3 decades, they always ran unopposed. The reason they ran unopposed is because these Democrats who were posing as Republican committeemen never got together. They were never going to slate. There was never going to be a Republican in the general appointed by Republican quorum of committeemen, because they were truly all Democrats, and their job was to win that position, hold it down, and not slate.
So
and that changed. That changed when we came in.
Republican desert until we got together.
Well, we needed to sort of shed light on it. And the minute we picked up the rock, well, you know, I think right after we announced that we were going to have a full-blown effort to hijack the Republican Party back to the Republicans from the committeeman position, as soon as we declared that publicly, within 2 weeks, there were over a dozen resignations of good citizens who were committeemen who just knew that we were going to come in, and they had families that were established.
How many wards in Chicago again?
50 wards.
And 50 wards, what is the population for each ward? About approximately.
You know what? I don't know.
Is
the
it like a
numbers.
precinct? Is a precinct comparable to a ward?
I mean,
Or
everybody.
is it like a township?
Well, let's say you have 30,000 registered voters in a ward.
Okay.
All 30,000 can vote for a committeeman. I mean, that's a huge amount of voters. You know, I can say that in the 33rd.
That's about the size of a rep district.
30,000 is like a
Rep
representative.
yeah, a representative to state.
Yeah, I can only tell you
It's a much
that
bigger
it's
thing
a huge
Precinct. It's
huge
bigger than a
undertaking. And I think there was really such a surprise on the Democrats that this activity was even happening in Chicago, because if you think back a couple years, 2 years back, there was no discussion of Jack Roser's IR PAC activity. It wasn't until the victories came out and that the committeemen were unseated and everybody was trying to figure out where did these guys come from and how did that happen, that the fingers all started pointing at you,
You
Jack.
know what? We're going to go to a break. We will be right back. Stay with us. Go grab a cup of coffee. You're going to hear more from Deb Gordils. When we come back after the break, don't go away.